All right. It's a good afternoon, everyone, to some folks, and good morning, everyone, to some other folks. But we'll wait a couple minutes here, get everybody started. If you joined us a little bit ago here, we were just kind of chit-chatting and catching up on some of the things that are going on with the PMCG right now and seeing how we can keep improving all of our content for you, make sure we give you stuff that's relevant. Leslie took all the notes, right? She just smiled at me. You can put up with me. I'm a problem child. All right, let's see how we doing here. We're at about 1 minute. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Just a reminder that it is recorded. We do share out the recordings afterward as well. And I think hopefully this will be, while we kind of have very brief information to share in each of the different sessions and want to make this a little bit more collaborative, there's still some valuable little tidbits that we're hoping we can share with everyone. So recordings should definitely be something that you can kind of have in your back pocket to come back to later. All right, share my screen. Eventually, I will get to that button. Give me a thumbs up if you see my screen okay here. All right. Perfect. All right. I am going to do a real quick introduction here of, some of our ground rules. So housekeeping. Please, if you got noise going on in the background, go ahead and mute yourself. If you need the closed captioning because you've got some other things happening here, it should be enabled. Go ahead and turn that on. If you joined us by phone, please make sure that you don't put us on hold. We have actually had this happen before where people had some hold music going for some reason. So please don't do that. But just in general, we're not really tight on locking down the sound. So if you want to join in, please use the chat, raise your hand, or go ahead and unmute yourself and ask questions. These sessions are always meant to be something that we want your participation in. So please don't hesitate to reach out and engage with us in whatever way you're comfortable with. I already mentioned that the session's recorded, so we will share out with folks on Educause Connect, let you know when the recording is available. They always go onto YouTube. And then if we have any presentation materials, we will post those as well on Educause Connect in our library for you to access later. As typical, these webinars are presented by the co-chairs, myself, Lisa Velas, and our steering committee. We have a few members of the steering committee here. Carol and Ed and Christina are that. Jennifer's here too. So, you can see our faces, let them know that we're the people that are trying to come up with all the ideas for things. But I will ask you later too, if you have great ideas, go ahead and share them with us. We're always open to hearing how we can best address whatever your needs are at the moment. I will give a quick update on the open call. So if you remember that recently on Connect, there was an open call for more steering committee members. I'll give you a quick update on that. And then last month, we introduced the Agile Moment. We're going to do another Agile Moment here. It is our intention to keep injecting a quick, 5-10 minute Agile Moment lesson for you in every one of our monthly sessions. So keep your eyes open. Hopefully this is going to address some of the ongoing things that we hear from people with Agile concerns and questions. And then carrying on our kind of theme that we've had for the last few months, we've been talking about facilitating lessons learned and trying to make the most of those types of formalities in projects. This time around, we're going to try and share a very simple approach to how you can use what's available for systems to capture those things and make them available for your teammates. So one of my colleagues in the University of Michigan Project Management Office is here, and he'll join me with trying to answer any of your questions on how we've done just that. It's a very simple approach. Anybody could do it. And we do that intentionally to make it as easy as possible to not only get those things, but find them afterward and take advantage of it. So open call, we actually got a pretty decent response. I got 13 members who within like the first couple of days were like, I am super interested, sign me up. Out of that, I've got roughly about 4 people that I got that were private institutions and 10 from public. Now, right now, our existing steering committee is kind of a mix. We're in about a half and half. And it's our goal to always have a blend of private, public, large, small, medium. We want to try and be as blended and diverse as possible, just so that we can ensure that we're answering things that might be relevant to specific groups, right? And we do know that there are different needs. Like sometimes we just want to try and keep an ear on Connect, but it's really good if we have a person to talk to directly who's in the trenches, so to speak. And that helps us make sure that whatever we're providing for you is useful. So we did get a decent number of private institution volunteers, but always a much larger number from public. We're going to try and see if we can simplify that list down to a top 4. We did only have the one opening, but I'm kind of inclined at this point to go ahead and see if the steering committee is supportive of trying to do 2 or 3 more people. So we might even open it up to several folks to join the steering committee, but at a minimum, we're going to get 2 more people out of here. We'll start with the narrow it down to 4. We'll take that 4 and go back and try and discuss some next steps with them to figure out how we simplify that even more. No matter what, everybody's going to hear the results afterwards. So if you did voice interest and you haven't heard back, we're not ignoring you. No matter what, we're going to reach out to you and let you know what's going on. And we can still keep your name on hand just in case there's an opening in the future. Sometimes we've had members, and this has even happened in the recent years, we've had members who have left higher ed and gone out to private sector. We had to backfill. So it's always good for us to have sort of a list of people who have voiced interest so that we can kind of reach back out and say, hey, are you still interested? Because we'd love to bring you on board. That eliminates the whole need for an open call and vetting a bunch of people if somebody's already sort of on that backlog of potential interested parties. So promise you'll be hearing from us, but might be a little bit another week or so before we can get through some of the list of names and getting some of the information pulled together. Does anybody have any questions about it? No? If you do after the meeting here, please don't hesitate to reach out to me again, and I'd be more than happy. I see a couple of names here that I think are people who have voiced interest. So if you have any questions, let me know. I might take a little bit of time to get back to my email, but I will definitely respond. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to Ed and Christina. And they're going to share our Agile Moment this month. Now, Ed, Christina, did you want to have me present for you, or would you like to take the screen sharing?
You can go ahead and share the slides if you want. That's fine.
Okay.
That will work.
We don't have to switch back and forth. All right. So thanks everyone for joining, and this will be our Agile Moment for the month. Ed and I got together to discuss some topics, and so we'll start by going over how this is going to look. So Jen, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. Oh, that was one too far. There we go. Thank you. Okay, so our thought here is what we did was we went and looked at what the Agile Moment will look like for all of these future meetings. So our intent behind this is to foster discussion regarding Agile values and principles and practices and how they fit into higher ed. And this is meant to be a time where the community can come together and engage with each other so that we can learn and grow together. So what we would like to do is we're going to start by going over Agile values and principles each month. We're going to hone in on one specifically, but also we're open to other topics as well. So if there's anything specific that you're interested in, Agile related in higher ed, please let us know and we will put that into consideration for upcoming months. And for this month specifically, we're going to focus on individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So the first of the Agile values. And then we just ask that, for the upcoming months, you participate. We're thinking about looking at putting out surveys for the upcoming topic to understand what you all are seeing and going through or curious about. Again, please feel free to suggest topics, or if anybody else would like to present a topic, it does not need to be Ed or I. So we would love to have other members of the community present the Agile Moment as well. All right, I think we can go to the next slide, Jen. So again, this month we are going to look at individuals and interactions over processes and tools. And just a reminder that this is over, not instead of. I know I hear that a lot when people are talking about these things in the various Agile podcasts and stuff that I listen to. It's always emphasizing over, not instead of. So the idea of not letting processes and tools drive what we're doing, that we're really thinking about how we're meeting the needs of the stakeholders and the team and all that. All right, next slide. So here we're looking at how can we put individuals in interaction first, really coming down to various ways that we communicate. In my mind, or in what's been on my mind lately, are things like working agreements, setting expectations, how are we promoting well-being and psychological safety. And I was listening to the Agile Mentors podcast recently, and their most recent episode actually mentioned specifically individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Again, not letting the tools drive what we're doing, but going back and seeing what does the team need, starting simple and not letting things get too complex just for the sake of things being complex. So to me, thinking about this, I was thinking about working agreements. So how are you managing asynchronous, synchronous work? Where is this happening? Is it convenient for people? Are we meeting them where they are? Are we meeting them where they're comfortable? If they're uncomfortable with new tools, like how are we helping people get more familiar and get that experience? Setting expectations with roles and responsibilities. So who's responsible for what parts of the project? Are deadlines clear? Things like that. Are we understanding what the stakeholders want and what's valuable? And then things like not, delaying the start time of meetings. So people may have a few minutes between meetings to get up and walk around or do whatever they need to do. Are we taking breaks during long meetings, giving people a few minutes? I know I've heard a lot about walking meetings. I have not done them yet, but I know that's something that people are starting to look at and try to incorporate. And then psychological safety. Are we giving the team room to feel like they can give honest feedback? Do they feel like they can share kind of off the wall ideas in the hopes that it leads to something maybe more doable? But just making sure that people feel like they can communicate honestly and communicate their needs and wants. And so those were some of the things that I was thinking about. Ed, did you want to add anything there?
Yeah, I listened to a couple of podcasts as well. And remember last month we met, Jen called me out and said we were going to monitor Ed's Agile training, right? So as I'm reading this, one of the principles that an Agile purist might say is, face-to-face interaction is preferred, but oftentimes reality gets in the way of what is ideal. So again, I like where Christina says it's an over, like the statement on the previous slide that's on the left is preferred, but that doesn't mean it's hardcore, lean into that principle. So when you've got environments where you've got hybrid workers, remote workers, while face-to-face is preferred, sure. What are some things you're doing, which is one of the points that Christina's making here on this slide. What are some things you're doing to despite the fact that you've got people working in various places, maybe not co-located, what are you doing now to make sure that you are putting the individuals and those interactions over those processes and tools? So.
There was another instance that I'm thinking back to a podcast I was listening to that I think really got to me as a parent. And this person had blocked off time on their calendar every morning, but it didn't say what it was. It was probably just something like busy or something, but it was time for them to walk their child to school. And when they had expressed that to their team and they were nervous to do it because they didn't think that that others would understand, she got the opposite reaction, and that the rest of the team then became very protective of that time period. So anytime somebody outside of the team tried to schedule a meeting during that time, they all said no because they understood that, that was important for her well-being, that it was an important part of her life and they valued that. And so she felt very supported as a team. So, these topics here all kind of go back to creating and appreciating and creating value and support and just an environment where everybody can thrive and come together. So I think these are pretty important.
Totally agree. I would say the Agile purist would also say, or an Agile fan would say, it's the people that deliver the solutions. The tools do not deliver the solutions. So that's Christina's story there is an example that the people interactions are coming first, and you've got to attend to those needs. And you can have the best tool in the world, the best development tools, the best team meeting tools, the best collaboration tools. But if you don't attend to the individuals and those interactions, your stakeholders, your project team, all those pieces, then the tools just aren't going to get you there.
Should we move on to our discussion, Ed?
I think so. I've got a timer set. Thanks for Jen helping me to sync up with where we need to be. We've got about 3 minutes. I don't say that to rush these questions, but I do want to make sure that we allot time for the main topic. So let's hop to the next slide. So we could hit some of these, what we can get accomplished here. So really, we want to turn the presentation around and get the group to participate, because this is Agile would say people come first, right? So anybody wants to address that first question? What does this core value mean to you? Is there anything that Christina and I haven't said that you want to bring forward? Right, we've got
Ooh, this is going to be one of those meetings where I should have pre-populated my my roulette board. And then we just pick a person.
Let's take the safe space question, because maybe we need to create a safe space. So let's ask a question about safe spaces. Oh, there you go. There you go. Thank you, Yvonne. Agree to listen without judging. Excellent. Thank you. Importance of flexibility. Yes. Now, are those answers to Jen's question in the chat, or are those answers to what does this mean to you? Or is the answer to that question yes, both?
I think personally, from my experiences with Agile, I would say that is number one all across the board. And it can be very challenging, right? There's a tendency to immediately sort of downplay when somebody says something that seems completely off the wall and silly and never going to happen. And oh, that's crazy. It's, you can't possibly make that happen. And even stuff as simple as that can really squelch the whole interaction with the team and make them feel less likely to speak up ever again.
As I continue to learn more about Agile, I can't help myself, but I'll make connections to what I call traditional project management. And this one value, to me, it intersects with the thing that I've always said with projects. And it actually came up last time we met, which was, projects succeed or fail based upon the communication. Well, what's that communication about? That's communicating to people, right? So it should be no surprise that this is the very first core value of the Agile manifesto.
And I don't know if it's been your experience, but I know sometimes we forget to talk about how we're going to talk, right? So that's an important conversation, and then it's kind of hard to go back to that in the middle of something and kind of get everybody steered in the right direction. But it's such an important conversation, I think, to have from the very beginning.
Yeah, I like Vanessa's comment there in the chat. High quality outputs mean that you have to have high quality inputs. I love that, because I used to supervise a video guy, and he would say, he would always tell me when he was dealing with video input, he's like, I can't make garbage shine. The quality of the video is the quality of the video. So love that. There you go. That beep that you just heard was our timer. So in the spirit of keeping things moving, Jen, are you ready to go
I am,
with?
but we did have one question of
Sure thing.
Christina, if you could share the podcast that you'd recommend. So any that you've
Yeah.
been listening to?
My favorite is called the Agile Mentors podcast. So that is my absolute favorite, but I can maybe I can share it in the community, and anybody else that has a favorite podcast could share also. So I'm always looking for more.
All right, let's move on here. That's the end of your presentation, right?
Yes. So the questions that were in the discussion, we think we would like to feed those into a survey that we'll send out in advance so that as we prepare for the next meeting, we can get some of that engagement and feedback and get people thinking about how they're seeing that particular value or principle in their environment. And then we'll have a similar format going forward for the Agile Moment. So thank you very much.
No, thank you. Ed, Christina, thank you.
Our pleasure. This has been fun.
We've been talking about having an agile moment forever now, and I'm loving that this is actually happening and coming together. So I appreciate Ed has been one of the people who's been kind of advocating that. Some of my other members of the steering committee have really been kind of keeping that up front and center. We know that there's a lot of questions out there, and hopefully we can kind of bring those into these meetings. So I wouldn't call it the main presentation, it's the main conversation point, but we've been doing these conversations and presentations about facilitating lessons learned, ways that you can make the most of trying to disseminate the feedback and do something with it afterward, make it actionable. But one of the things that we haven't really talked about is what are the registries and repositories? What are the systems that people have created to be able to track those things and to be able to share and communicate the information at a later date for people to be able to leverage those lessons learned? If I talk about the agile world is a little bit different because in those settings, we're saying that you're going to learn something pretty quickly and you're going to turn around and you're going to apply that immediately to what you're doing right now. So keep that one in mind. I understand that agile has a slightly different flavor. These things doesn't necessarily, they're not mutually exclusive. Doesn't mean that you can't still have a repository or registry, just that the practice of capturing and facilitating that conversation is a little bit different here. But one of the things that I wanted to do here, and I can introduce you to one of my colleagues here in the University of Michigan's ITS Project Management Office, Eric Bannon. We have been through several flavors of lessons learned. We have been down the rabbit hole of doing these very formal, top-heavy processes with Wiki. We've had SharePoint. Like we've had just, you name it, it's been done here at some point. And all of a sudden, a lot of us started really thinking it like in a different way of, okay, what are we really trying to get to with this thing? And so we kind of stripped back a bunch of stuff and started really thinking through some things and finally figured out what our real goal was for the lessons learned. And with that in mind, how we can best capture things and open it up and share it so that we can take advantage of those lessons learned, right? So that's what we're going to be talking about today is how we do things today. Not necessarily all of the bazillions of ways that we did it before, just how we do it today and how we've really tried to simplify the process and make it so much easier. And I can tell you that it actually, at least for me, on several occasions has been helpful. And I know most of my colleagues would probably agree that it's a nice sanity check from time to time to go back into this system and kind of look at things, see what's going on. So Eric Brannon, you're with me here.
Yes, I am. Thank you for having me today.
I appreciate it. All right, let's see here. So part of our little quick presentation here is to discuss why we track lessons learned. We're going to introduce you very briefly, very quickly to the University of Michigan's ITS Project Management Office's process for lessons learned, and then sort of some of the things that we do for how we use those lessons learned. And it might surprise you actually how we do these things. It's not just project planning, so stay tuned. But little comic moment here. Spidey senses. Does everybody know what we mean when we say spidey senses? Okay. Eric, I might put you on the spot here. What's the definition that we came up with for explaining what the spidey senses mean?
So our definition of spidey senses is generally refers to extraordinary ability to sense imminent danger and as a sort of a kind of a sixth sense that we have as project managers when we hear certain things. As an example, I've been on various projects where we know we're going to be deploying a solution for a wide variety of customers. And you hear from your project sponsor, hey, we don't necessarily need to communicate this. And it's like, well, you're changing something for a large customer base. So I think you want to communicate these things. And just various other things that you'll hear as a project manager over time that raises the hairs on the back of your neck.
That's exactly it too. And it's hard when you're first starting, you haven't been through those experiences as much, so you don't necessarily have the built-in spidey senses. That's where we share the information with others. But once you've been here long enough, those spidey senses are super in tune. Like you get this like sixth sense intuition that just kicks in when you hear certain comments or phrases and you're like, oh gosh, I've been there before. This is not, yeah, let's not do this again. Let me go just check my sanity to make sure that this isn't going to blow up in my face.
Right. And not to cut into that point, I've heard some very extreme ones. For instance, hey, we can test that in production. And some are more subtle. Some may be more subtle, such as, hey, we're just starting our requirements, but I'm quite sure we can have this solution deployed in a month. And it's like, well, I know if you're just finishing requirements now, there's no way you're going to get through testing and the other things you need to do to get this out in another month. So, like I said, it could go from those things that trigger the smaller, and there are some that are pretty extreme, and you go like, you know what, we need to really talk about this a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's perfect. And it all boils down to really it's trying to be a good, proactive risk manager. Good and bad. There can also be some positive things that you just like, wow, that happened and we did not anticipate it. It actually worked out in our favor. Still a positive risk management item, but you still want to know those things, right? So as a good manager, a project manager, or somebody who's trying to help the teams, your goal is really to set them up for success. You're there to set the vision, make sure that they revisit it, and then you're helping them with the plan and the details and helping it remove the barriers and just facilitate their successes, right? So you're going to be paying attention to those things that are going to throw you off. You're going to try and avoid or mitigate the stuff that's big enough that's going to really throw this project off. You're going to try and at least acknowledge and see maybe if you can take advantage of a positive risk. Maybe you can make that happen again. Did you find something that significantly changed things? Maybe you want to see if you could do it again, right? Things that can be changes for the teams, it's all just trying to manage all that stuff and just help them make sure that at the end of the day, they're all smiling and still breathing and not ready to change institutions or anything. Not that that's what happened to you, Ed. I'm just saying, ideally, I don't scare my colleagues off or my team members off to some other institution after a project. Knowing your audience is critical for your spidey senses. Absolutely, Carol. Absolutely. All right. So currently at the University of Michigan in ITS's project management office, I'm going to say ITS because If you're familiar enough with the University of Michigan, you know that we are just massive and we have a number of different departments and units who may also have their own project management offices. ITS is sort of the central information technology service provider for your core services, your main enterprise level services, and some of the commodity services like infrastructure, Wi-Fi, like those pieces. ITS is that unit. And we have, because we are such a massive service provider for campus, have a PMO. But there's also one for the Michigan medicine side. There's one that I believe is spun up with one of the colleges recently. So just know I'm prefacing ITS because we do things our way, and it probably is fairly different from others. I can tell you it's definitely different from what they do in the health system because we intentionally keep it very simple, lean, and nimble. We do have a guidebook. We have a whole project management guidebook that has a bunch of stuff in it. And in there, there are also recommendations for how to manage lessons learned. A lot of us senior PMs have figured out along the way that I get the best information if I hurry up and document it when it happens versus trying to figure out what that thing was down the road, right? If it actually resulted in a legitimate issue or risk, sure, I can probably go through that later on because the log has that information. But sometimes they don't necessarily make it into that. And I want to just capture it right away. Like the team was very responsive, caught it, fixed it, moved along. But it could have been a disaster had they not addressed it quickly. And that ongoing log, super helpful. And a lot of us have gotten in that practice. And I think we're finding that some of our junior PMs and accidental PMs are starting to get in a similar practice. Maybe not in the same way, but they're recognizing that it's good to get it on paper or in notes before too long. You don't want to try and go through and do an audit after the fact and try to grab all that information later on. Keep it in that same place front and center early on. We do note that it's optional. We're going to make you do that on an ongoing basis, but it's recommended. And after a while, you'll probably find that you're better off doing that anyway, just to save yourself a little bit of heartache down the road. We do require that we do a lessons learned at the end of a project. There are some very small exceptions. They're kind of like task force initiatives or like pet projects that spun up that maybe aren't even tracked the same way. Those are so few and far between, but for the most part, end of project, any project that goes through the project management office, the ITS project management office, do a lessons learned. Now, one of the things that we figured out a while back is that taking the executing or execution project manager out of the mix and having a second person facilitate that lessons learned seems to go a long way with getting more genuine and honest feedback from the team members. I think once the team finishes a project, they just feel very close, very bonded, and they're less likely to want to say anything that might be perceived as negative. And so taking that person out of that space and allowing them to contribute as a team member versus as the person kind of pulling information out of people really just levels that playing field and opens a door to getting some information, even from quiet people who maybe just don't feel comfortable speaking up. So how long have we been doing that, Eric? We've had second PMs doing this for a while now.
Ever since I've been with the PMO. I
Okay.
mean, that's gone, 10 years.
Okay.
That's been the practice ever since I've been there.
Yeah, I feel like it started right after I started, and I've only been here a year longer than you. So it was right around that time frame that we just discovered, let's change this a little bit here. Process is simpler, but we still have that same sort of players in the mix. And we leave it open. We don't assign people to it. We tend to, as PMs, we go out to our Slack channel and we're like, hey, I've got a lessons learned that needs to be facilitated round about this time frame. Is anybody available? And then because we operate in sort of this autonomous, like empowered environment in our PMO, it's whoever feels like they have the time and the bandwidth and maybe an interest, they'll go ahead and say, hey, yeah, I can do that. Or, hey, can it wait another week? Because I've got some opening that's coming up the week later. Figure it all out, and then that person volunteers for it. So it's not an assignment basis. It's just one of those, we all like each other, so we tend to all volunteer and help each other out wherever we can.
And two, for the newer project managers that may be coming onto the team, it also helps them become familiar with some of the teams that we work with and kind of build those relationships as they conduct these sessions.
That's a really good point, actually. And I have heard from people that they've learned quite a bit from just facilitating a lessons learned with a team that they haven't worked with yet. There's a lot of those conversations as people are discussing and sharing things. You can't get that in a formal onboarding. These are like almost like sitting and having coffee with somebody, because you will get all the feels and you'll get a lot of conversation happening during those meetings. You're smiling, Eric. You
Yeah,
got
well,
anything else?
I just want to kind of go back to the emphasis on facilitate, because in some of the sessions where you may have a project that didn't go so well, you know, there can be a lot of mixed emotions, and so you really want to have, and I'll kind of go back to something that was brought up earlier before, a safe space. So with each session, we do lay out ground rules that all your feedback is, you know, respected. All your input and, you know, will be taken into account. There are no wrong or right answers. We just want to make sure we're getting all the information to improve projects going forward. So we try to take as much of the emotion out of the room before we start. And that way it sets a tone that we're just really here to get information, not point fingers and call people out. And as far as long as I've been doing them, I've had very few that went off the rails.
Yeah, I feel like I've only had one. And it was a pretty interesting project. So I'll but yes, you're right. Facilitation is key. And I think that also helps with the project managers having, we tend to have a quick chit chat before that facilitator gets into the project lessons learned. So we will actually talk to each other and give them sort of some insight into, you might have some challenges here, you might have a person who's going to want to talk about this particular thing, you know, like just give them some history about the project just to set the expectations up front. It's rare. Most of the people I think have been through it enough now where they're pretty respectful, but once in a while, if the project was bad, it was tense, it was stressful, the schedule got changed, the scope got changed a bazillion times, like it'll be stressful for some folks, and then you'll need a facilitator to jump in and say, hey guys, let's keep it moving. We got a parking lot, you got some place to put that at. Let's move along. I think one of the things that's been a little bit more recent, I say relatively more recent, is sometime in the last like 4 years, I think is when we introduced the quarterly PMO review. What we do is this one is assigned, where every quarter a project manager in the PMO is assigned to a role of sort of an administrator who works with the project management office operations team to review some of our lessons learned, go through some of our documentation to make sure that it's current and up to date. Just whatever needs to happen to kind of help facilitate some of that work. And the quarterly process, that PM will go through the lessons learned from projects that they've had a lessons learned in the past, 4 to 6 months, and look for the lessons learned information that might be helpful to bubble up to the team. Now, a lot of times it's just simple things that they can help give you some quick tips and highlights on. once in a while, there's like a big lessons learned. And Eric, I think the one that's coming to mind right now was with one vendor who had statements in their contract language that talked about by contracting with our service, we can own the domain for all accounts under this particular account. Like, it was pretty wild, right?
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
well, and during that quarterly process, we also go through and we kind of group together if we're hearing similar types of common risk or issues from a particular group. And that way we'll bring it to the team and say, hey, with this team that we're working with, we're starting to hear these certain risk issues or concerns from this group. Or it may be more positive. Hey, this group is, using this method to get things done, and we'll bring that to the surface also. So it's really going over and looking at those lessons learned and kind of picking out those helpful nuggets for the rest of the team going forward, including finding things like Jen just mentioned.
Yeah, that one really threw us all for a loop, but yeah, it's just a good way to, instead of having to wait for a project manager to kick off a project and go look at the lessons learned, we have an opportunity to share that with our colleagues. And this does it in a little bit more organized fashion for us to just kind of glean through some information and make it simpler to present to the team so that they don't have to try and read each thing word by word and digest it all. But yeah, we've had a couple of things that have come up to our PMO meetings, and we do have regular meetings, so they're typically bi-weekly, but once a quarter, once every, at least, I think I've seen the least was like every 6 to 8 weeks, there'll be somebody who'll bring something about a project that's coming up. The ad hoc piece that I have here, though, is to review your past findings for relevant info. This is where that spidey senses thing kind of comes in. Most folks will actually have documentation from the process, but then there's also information that gets put into our system for a workspace that we can go to. And I'll talk about this one in a little bit here because it's a simple solution, but it works for us because it's so simple. You don't have to have a bunch of tools and tips and things to work through. We use Google Forms to capture the surveys from the team members. They're all anonymous, so they don't have to worry about us tracking it. We could, but we don't. We don't want to track people's information. We just want them to fill it out. That gets tied to a Google Sheet. So that sheet is going to have all of the survey information in it, and then we can create a Google slide deck. That slide deck will have some of the summarized aggregated feedback from the survey itself. And then from there, we have our conversations with the slide deck, and the information then gets summarized in Team Dynamics, which is our project management system, right? Most of the time, what you're going to find is that we don't put a ton of additional content into Team Dynamics. What we do instead is there's a task entry in our project, and it gets a link to the actual document repository where the survey and feedback information is at. But that survey tends to identify some stuff that might be a little bit more critical, or the lessons learned conversations themselves might identify some things that we want to make into what we call our spidey senses. And that's where we end up coming back and trying to put it into another area where we can try and go back to it at a later date versus going to a shared drive or a location where we can find documentation. But keep it simple. That was our whole motto on this thing. We didn't want to have a big giant knowledge base. We didn't want to have SharePoint. We didn't want to necessarily force project managers to read through multiple shared drives and documents and stuff. Just keep it super simple and use what we had. And we had Google Workspace, and we had Team Dynamics, and it just seemed to fit the bill there. So I don't know that we've had a lot of negative thoughts on it. It's worked well for me, and we'll see if it continues to work over time here. I don't know, you, Eric?
Yeah, it worked well for me.
We don't have to have a whole heck of a lot of training on it, and that
No.
is awesome. All right. I could give you a live demo of this, but I took some screenshots instead. But what we did was in Team Dynamics, there's the project and there's an issues log. Now, there's also a risks log, but we thought, let's just shrink it up and together. And so we only use the issues log per se, but you're going to see that there's the categories there. So if you can see on my screenshot here, we've got a category showing for lessons learned. In that issues log, we can create categories for risks, lessons learned, actual issues. And we chose to do that because it makes it a little easier to just pull that all out of the same place, right? Could be really fancy and keep it in separate areas, but since we were using this for lessons learned, it just made sense to keep it all the same. And that allows us to quickly report on that information, right? So lessons learned gets its own custom category, and then we just enter them into that project. And this is an example of one where we're keeping track of the lessons learned during the project, right? This is where I'm keeping like a repeated ongoing log of stuff that bubbles up throughout the project lifecycle. I'm just putting it in there. And then later on, I can go back at a later date and grab those things to move them to other places, like the workspace that I'm going to show in a little bit here. Anybody got any questions so far? Does anybody out there use Team Dynamics too? I know we're kind of in a space where some folks are Team Dynamics and some are ServiceNow and others might be using other systems. Okay.
Great. Ed, are you actually use Team Dynamics or some other tool?
I don't use Team Dynamics, but I'll play one on TV. No, seriously, we are using Team Dynamics at K-State. I like this idea of incorporating a category into the issues feature of Team Dynamics, because this is a good way to park them. And since you can, as with any PPM tool, you can report on just about any data that's in there. So then you could extract just the lessons learned and create a central lessons learned repository that people can browse if they choose to do that. I like this idea.
Yep. I like it because I have one place to go to put my issues, my risks, and my lessons learned.
The
I
thought
don't
is
have to
good to me too.
figure out the 3 or 4 or 5 different tabs in my workbook. I'm going in different sections. It's like one place to rule them all. It works great.
And I'll add one more comment because it fits here too, but going back to what you said about ongoing logs, when you're managing, as you get more and more experience, you start managing more than one project, right? And the projects grow to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. It isn't realistic to expect you to facilitate those meetings and recall everything that happened at the lessons learned meeting. So I've started just front loading. As soon as somebody says, oh, we need to remember this, it instantly gets put into the place where we store lessons learned. And then when that lessons learned meeting pops around, people can decide, yeah, that was an issue at the time, but not anymore because we misunderstood something. So it might get struck, or you might edit it. And it's just a great way to make those lessons learned meetings a little bit more productive.
Yep.
And here, now you have a method for recording that as you go through other projects.
Yep. Yeah, Yvonne says, do you also categorize your lessons learned by type, like communications, vendor management, procurement? It's interesting because we do try to note that in the content itself, but that's come up in a conversation here recently where we're trying to figure some things out. So currently, I would say not quite, but I think we might be getting down that path here eventually. All right. Real quick screenshots. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to say something,
Yeah, one
Eric?
more question. How does a PM in your group know about other lessons learned from other projects? Sandy asked that question.
Yep. We will get to that one in a second here, Sandy, because there's 2 different ways that you can do that. One is to wait for somebody to share it with you at the quarterly meetings. Oh, I guess there's three. There's three. There's that. You could also wait for it to make its way to this like workspace spidey senses that I'm going to talk about in a sec here. Or you could, at any point in time, run a report. And if somebody's captured it, the report is going to pull that in too, right? So I'll show that one in a sec here. So there's three different ways that you could share the information out. Some being more of a pull it in themselves, whereas the quarterly meetings are more of the project management office is there and we're going to push it out to you instead. But we do the surveys. It's actually it's pretty robust. We've simplified it several times, but you will find that we do tend to tailor it a little bit depending on the project. So it's not uncommon for us to kind of take a couple questions and reword it a smidge just because it doesn't make sense in that context. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we have such a variety of projects where some are working with a vendor who's already got a solution and it's mostly a SaaS thing, whereas another one might actually be like we're building a data center or redoing a data center, like, and the terminology is a little different. So it's up to the facilitating, or not the facilitating, but the execution project manager, the person who ran the project, to ensure that that survey is applicable to that project and help the facilitator make sure that it makes sense for people, right? Got a quick snippet of our slide deck here. I don't expect this one to be magic or anything, but it's very simple and we make sure that it's pretty consistent though. And then this is the magic where the workspace happens. In Team Dynamics, you can take those issue entries that are marked as a lessons learned. You could even do this with the risk or issue too, but we do this with the lessons learned ones. And you can say, I want to share that with this workspace, right? And we call this workspace the ITS project management or PMO spidey senses. And everyone in the PMO has access to this workspace where we can see previous lessons learned that have been captured somewhere along the way. And as long as the lessons learned process, they made sure that they took those things and moved them over there, they'll pop up on this workspace for us to look at. The other option is a report. I don't think I have that one shared here, but we have a report that grabs all of the lessons learned categorized issues into one report. So you can go through that report and see all of those entries in it as well. So another way that a project manager could take it upon themselves to go and just look at all of the lessons learned that have been captured over time. And it still is all in the same area, just a report that's been set up to do so. I think that's it. Did I miss anything really critical, Eric?
Nope, that's it. Very good job of covering everything.
I love having Eric here because he's really humble about this one, but he was the one who actually started referring to things as the spidey senses. And a couple of my colleagues, Jennifer Murray and Jennifer Swaney, were the ones that worked with him together too to try and set up this very simple, streamlined process in Team Dynamics. And I've just been very fortunate to take advantage of it. And I love it because I've been through, I don't know how many different organizations and how many different variations. I set up PMOs that had to use SharePoint and other systems. And I will tell you that this thing is hands down the easiest to use and populate with content, and also to go back to and look at it later on and try to get my stuff out of there to take advantage of some of the lessons learned that some of my coworkers have been through already. But I love it. Oh, the workspace work. It's just a view. It is a view where you can actually put those things in and see. Let's see if it'll actually log me in right away or if I have to log in. All right. So when you're in a project and you see those links for issue entries with the category of lessons learned, the project manager can go in there and they can choose to take that entry and share it with this workspace. And that just creates sort of a link to it, if you will, that says this also is on the workspace. Now, the link to the shared drives is a little different because that is actually typically on the project plan itself. And the project plan will have a task entry on that has the lessons learned. And from there, there'll be a link to a shared drive. So this is kind of your first pass at seeing if something catches your eye. If it looks like you need more detail or you want to dive a little bit deeper, that's when you have to go to that specific project and try to do a little bit more investigation. But this is kind of a quick way to just see, does it make sense? Is this something I want to look into further?
You had another question from John?
When you mentioned you take the
Okay.
executing PM out of the lessons learned facilitator role, do they still participate? Yes, they do. They do. And it's a nice way for that person to also sit back and try to think about their experience on the project versus worrying about what everybody else is going to say and what they're thinking and doing and everything, right? You're looking at it from what you experienced during the project. That's a different view, but it still is relevant to the team. So it helps you really just kind of sit and pause and go, okay, how did I feel during this project? What things did I struggle with? What things did I have to work through more? And you can't easily do that as a facilitating PM. It's like you're too busy trying to play counselor or do all the other things that you're doing with the other team members, right? But you were part of the team, like, and you have to still share things that happened with your area too. And those are all parts of what we're going to learn from for the future projects. All right. I think we're at about 3 minutes before the end of our presentation here. So I'm going to switch back to our main one. And we don't really have much content after this, but I will say if you do have any questions, you want to collaborate or anything, just please feel free to reach out. Like I said, I didn't create this process, but I love it. And I will brag about my coworkers to no end about how amazing and awesome they are. But if you are interested in learning some of the things that they've done, I will share with you, connect you, network. I work with some people that are way smarter than me and I love it. But we do have an opening for an idea for next month. I have a couple of things queued up, but I'm not totally committed to anything yet. So if you have any specific topics that you would love to hear about, let me know. We'll see if we can squeeze that in between now and then. We do have a confirmation of our June meeting, which is going to be very much around communication, specifically the behavior-based communication. I think you're going to love that. If I'm really fortunate, I'm going to convince some of my other colleagues to come in and talk a little bit more about some communication stuff in September. We'll see. We also plan on having the PMI come back in August to try and talk through some more of their certifications, microcreds, and some of the documentation they have available. Please do always share your ideas for anything that you'd like to see here. We're here for you. We're here to present content that's going to be helpful for you. So if you don't even want to throw it in the Connect, you just want to send me an email and say, I have this great question that I really want to see more information on, I'm open to that as well. Don't hesitate to reach out. Okay, next meeting is May 16th. And as always, we put the registration links out on the blog post that's out there for all the 2023 meetings. You can register in advance, or you can wait until I send the NAG message out to say, hey, come join us for May. Don't forget to register. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your day. Any questions? Absolutely connect with us. We're here.